Welcome to Forward Ever, Leading in Challenging Times, presented by Worth Wealth Management, a weekly conversation with area leaders about how to persevere during uncertain times. Now here's your host, Gary Shorman.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Forward Ever, Leading in Challenging Times. We always talk about leadership, different fields, leadership in our state. And one of our leaders that deals with the oil and gas industry is Ed Cross, president of the Kansas Oil and Gas Association. Ed, good to have you on our program today.
Yeah, thank you, Gary. It's great to be here.
You know what, is there ever, we talk about challenging times and leadership in those times. Has there ever not been a challenging time in the oil and gas industry?
No, I've been in the oil and gas industry for over 38 years, 20 years right here in Kansas. And I've never seen a time that we didn't have challenges. So it's something that we always expect.
Well, you do that. You come from a background, I believe you were a geologist getting started. And how did you get it started with the KIOGA group?
Yes, I was a geologist and actually working in Illinois for a small independent producer. I worked there for 14 years for a producer managing their production operations. And then I got into some of the government relations work there. And then the opportunity for KIOGA came open, and it was a great fit for myself and for the industry. So I'm very glad to be here.
Well, you know what? One of the things, and I don't want to go any farther in the program without recognizing this, but you were honored with an award for the National Institute of Lobbying and Ethics for a national award in 2023 here. Congratulations on that award. That's a prestigious list of people on that list.
Yes, I was very honored and to be on that list. That's called the Top Lobbyist, Federal Lobbyist Award, and it was quite an honor for me to be on that list and to be recognized for that. I'm just very happy to be able to represent the small businesses that make up the Kansas oil and gas industry, and to be recognized in that list.
Well, let's talk a little bit about KIOGA. You mentioned that this Kansas Oil and Gas Association. Who makes that up? You said small businesses. Who makes up that association here in Kansas?
Yeah, so the Kansas Independent Oil and Gas Association, we have about 3,000 members, and most of those are producers as well as allied service and supply companies. They're small producers. They raise their capital through the wellhead. They're not tapping equity markets or publicly traded companies. Most of them are small family-owned businesses out there that live and work right here in Kansas, and they're hardworking men and women, and it's an honor and a privilege to be able to serve this industry here in Kansas.
Let's talk a little bit about what's going on a national level. When you talk about lobbying, that's one of those things that you have to do is represent the group here. But the Biden administration just issued a final rule involving methane gas. For those that are unaware, what exactly is that rule entailed to do? What are they trying to accomplish with that rule?
Well, there's much that we can do to better understand emissions challenges, but it just seems like the Biden administration and federal government in general thinks that more regulation and higher taxes is the answer to all of that. And so what they're trying to do with the methane regulations is stop all the methane leaks that they think are leaks from marginal existing sources. And that greatly impacts the small producers in Kansas as well as across the nation.
What is the specific impact for local oil and gas producer?
So the main thing is in those regulations is they're looking at testing and measuring emissions from the wells, which is a costly test for those measurements. The Department of Energy actually did a study in 2022 that showed that any well that makes less than 6 barrels of oil equivalent per day actually emitted less methane emissions than what the threshold was the EPA wanted, but they ignored that third-party study to try to put these leak detection testing procedures on small producers, and it could have, I think some have estimated that as much as 40% of marginal wells could be shut down because of the costly nature of methane measuring procedures.
In Kansas, how many wells does that mean? Is that 40% of all the wells in Kansas or all the wells across the country?
Well, it's 40% of all marginal wells that they look at across the nation. So they define marginal wells as wells that make less than 15 barrels of oil per day. Here in Kansas, for example, our average well makes little over 2 barrels of oil per day. So it would affect a large number of wells here in Kansas as well as other states too. And that's a fabric of the community. Many communities across Kansas is the small family-owned businesses that run those marginal wells, and it's a big impact on a lot of communities.
How do you tell that story? Because you're dealing with the federal government, big agencies that are involved with doing that. But what does Ed Cross and what does KIOGA have to do to tell that independent oil and gas story? Where do you go?
Well, we start out with the fact of how many folks are employed here in Kansas, for example. We can do that for the national level too. But like I said, the average well makes 2.5 barrels of oil per day. We have wells that make more than that, but we have wells that make less than that as well. And those are in some counties, it's as much as 25% of the employment in some of the counties where oil and gas are found here in Kansas. And so that's these are the livelihoods of folks that drive the economy in those small areas. And we are not opposed to environmental standards. We think that can be done in a cost-effective way. And I think we've shown that here in Kansas that we work well with our state regulatory agencies to reduce not only emissions but environmental compliance in general. And so that's the story that we tell. These are the small businesses that are out there that are working hard every day, and it can be harmful for them.
So Kansas legislators will be returning to work here after the first of the year, at least back to Topeka for their work. Do you have an agenda for the Kansas legislators? Because there's a difference between what happens in Kansas, obviously, what happens on the federal level. What are the different things you're looking at for dealing with Kansas and what goes on with the state of Kansas?
Yes, here in Kansas, our session will begin January the 8th here in Topeka. We have an agenda. We put together an agenda every year on what we want to do, but mainly it's, we're looking at, we support, all of the above energy strategies, and we'll be looking at many of the advocacy is one in which we work to try to minimize legislative assaults on the oil and gas industry and retain some of the things that we have gained in the past. And our agenda basically lays out what's important for the KIOGA members as far as energy policy, energy tax, and regulatory issues.
Eventually, all the costs that go into this, whether it be regulation for methane, all the stuff goes into the cost of energy that we all pay for at the gas pump. Is there a correlation from the consumer on all of this?
That is true. I mean, whenever you have policies, whether they're national or state, right now we have mostly federal policies that are trying to stop oil and gas production basically everywhere in the United States. It means energy prices are going to go up, and unfortunately, the ones that are hurt most by that are the ones that can least afford that, because it means that their energy prices, whether it be fuels or even electricity or everything else that energy goes into making, is going to go up in price, and that affects like I say, a lot of the people that can least afford that, and we're starting to see that now, and we'll see more of that as long as this continues.
On the other side of it, the small companies that make up KIOGA, are they able to find workers that they need? Because across the state, we know there's a challenge finding a good workforce. How are KIOGA members hanging there? Because that's a complicated and rugged task that goes on out in the field.
That is true. The labor challenges affect many industries, and certainly the oil and gas industry is not exempt from that. So for the last couple of years, we've had many companies have had very difficult time finding enough employees to do the work that they need. So, it's resulted in delays in getting certain services and things provided that they need to get oil and gas wells up and running, simply because they have to wait for the services, and the service companies while they would very much like to have more employees, are struggling to find enough employees to run all of the equipment. So it's a struggle, and just like all the other industries out there, but they're working through that as we go along.
We're going to take a break here, Ed, but when we come back, I want to talk a little bit about the price of oil. A barrel of oil is not set by producers; it's set by an international market. And the price has been down recently, but want to kind of get your vision into the future of what you see there. So hang on, we're going to take a quick break.
Okay.
Our guest today is Ed Cross, president of the Kansas Independent Oil and Gas Association. We'll be back with more after this.
The most successful investors are those that can keep their emotions in check and take a longer-term view at what portfolios will be worth 3 to 5 years down the road. I'd say that's the most important in determining what investor outcomes are. Market corrections will continue in the future. We've seen many of them over the years, only to see equity prices rise higher, and that'll be the case in the future.
Worth Wealth Management, enhancing lives and strengthening families.
Welcome back to Forward Ever, leading in challenging times. Our program is brought to you by Worth Wealth Management. We're pleased to have as our guest today Ed Cross, who's president of the Kansas Independent Oil and Gas Association. And Ed, we went into the break talking about the price of a barrel of oil that turns out being the price that we eventually pay at the pump. It all has to work together that way. As you look into I assume you have a crystal ball that tells you exactly what the oil price is going to be, but what do you see coming down the road as we go into 2024? Right now, the price is down about 20% from its high earlier in the year. What do you see going forward?
Okay, yeah, I do not have a crystal ball, and I really don't know where oil prices are going into the future any more than anyone else out there. Certainly that's a uncertain factor for everyone out there. And it's difficult for producers to make budgets when you don't really know exactly what the price of oil is going to be. Some of the market challenges that we have out there, and oil is a global commodity. It's not set by Kansas producers or even producers in the United States as a whole, but it's a global market. And so when you have large OPEC, Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, are currently trying to cut their production. And when they cut their production, the global supply goes down, and that puts upward pressure on prices. And we have to look at the economy. When their demand goes down and there's forecasts that demand could fall, that would mean that there would be less demand for oil worldwide. And that's what one of the factors that causes oil prices to go down. So you just have to look at those and see where you think you're going to go. I know OPEC nations would like to see more of a stable price. And I know in Kansas, we just have to keep our costs down to a minimum in order to make a profit on that, because we cannot control the price of oil.
I'm driving down Interstate 70 the other day, and there was an oil rig up. It's actually south of Russell. They were drilling, and one of the KIOGA members out there drilling away. People see those things, but do they really understand how many people in Kansas are engaged in the oil and gas industry? Because we're known as a agricultural state, but we're also really high on the list when it comes to oil production across the country.
Yes, we are. Kansas is the 11th largest oil producing state in the United States. I think the 14th largest natural gas producing state. So we're nowhere near the size of Texas or New Mexico or others in the form of that, but we are still a major oil and gas producing state. And there's lots of folks, the oil and gas industry in Kansas supports over 100,000 jobs across the state. Direct employment is right at 13,800 folks in the oil and gas industry here in Kansas, and it provides $3 billion of family income across the state of Kansas for folks that are out there working in the oil and gas industry. So usually in Kansas, the oil and gas industry is usually in the top 3 in terms of gross state product for the state of Kansas. So it's an important industry for the state of Kansas, and it has been for many years, and it will be going forward in the future as well.
Ed, how do people find out more about KIOGA? I know there's an event coming up that's actually going to be hosted here in Hayes. It is, I believe, a semi-annual event. But tell me about that, and then how do people find out more about KIOGA?
Hey, let me talk a little bit about, we call it our KIOGA mid-year meeting. It's in April 17th through the 19th, and we're going to have it at Hayes at the Ellis County Fairgrounds. And we have a program there where we have seminars, and we'll have tours, as well as other activities there that folks can come and engage in, and producers and supply companies can learn things about that. We have we have a mid-year committee that's led by Dan Shippers right there in Hayes, and we look forward to a good turnout at that. Usually we'll draw around 250 or so folks to mid-year meetings. So we look forward to having a good crowd there.
Ed, is that only for oil and gas industry people, or can the general public attend and take a look at some of that equipment? It's one thing to drive by interstate and look at it. Can the general public show up?
Yes, I mean, we have registration fees for the convention, but it is open to the public as well. And I encourage anyone to come out and check out not only the seminars but the tours and look at the equipment out there that you can see. Ellis County is still the largest oil producing county in the state of Kansas, and so it's a center of activity here in Kansas, and we're really glad to be there.
No Ferris wheels, but a great show of equipment and producers and suppliers, correct?
Yes, and we have booths, exhibits, and lots of things to do there, and entertainment and good food. So good food and drink. So anybody wants to come out and visit with a lot of good people, there as well.
That sounds great. What's your website if people want to go there?
Yes, please. www.kioga.org. We call that KIOGA.org, and you can find all kinds of information about KIOGA, about the industry, as well as about our events and things like that. So I encourage you to go to our website and check that out.
Ed, thanks for joining us today, and thanks for being a part of the Kansas Oil and Gas Association, Independent Oil and Gas Association. Appreciate you taking the time to be on our program, and congratulations on that nice national award.
Thank you very much, Gary. I'm glad to be here.
Our guest today is Ed Cross, president of the Kansas Independent Oil and Gas Association. Our program is Forward Ever, Leading in Challenging Times, brought to you by Worth Wealth Management, where you can live with confidence. I'm Gary Shorman.
Thanks for joining us for Forward Ever, Leading in Challenging Times, presented by Worth Wealth Management. Join us right here next week for another episode with host Gary Shorman. Until then, remember to move forward ever, backward never.